Actually, Lawrence, my fiancé's voice cut through the polite murmurs of 200 guests. I think there's been a misunderstanding. My father looked surprised that Jasper was even speaking. Oh, my name is Jasper Hale, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of that country club ballroom. But perhaps you know me better as JH Construction and Development. We recently acquired a majority stake in Ashford Properties. The silence that followed was deafening. My stepmother's face drained of all color. What? Your family's real estate company, Jasper continued calmly. The one that's been struggling since the commercial market downturn. I bought 51% of it 6 weeks ago. My father stared at him like he'd grown a second head. That was purchased by a development company. Some firm out of Asia. The parent company is incorporated in Hong Kong for tax purposes, Jasper explained. But I'm the principal owner. JH Construction has holdings in 23 states and 3 countries. We're valued at approximately $2 billion. The number hit that room like a freight train. My stepbrother Preston actually choked on his champagne. And me? I was still processing the fact that the man I'd been sleeping next to for 3 years, the one my father had just publicly mocked as a construction worker, was a billionaire, but that wasn't even the best part. Welcome back to Revenge with Alice. If you're new here, I'm so grateful you found this channel. And to my incredible subscribers who keep coming back, you are the reason I do this. Your comments, your stories, your support mean everything to me. Before we get into today's story, I want to take a moment to pray for you. Wherever you are right now, whatever burden you're carrying, I pray that you find peace today. I pray that you discover your worth and never let anyone convince you you're less than extraordinary. I pray for your protection, your provision, and your prosperity. May you have the courage to walk away from anyone who makes you feel small, and the wisdom to recognize the people who truly see you. Amen. Now, let me tell you about the night my entire life changed. My name is Brennan Riley, and I'm 28 years old. The moment my father looked across his mahogany dining table at that birthday dinner and called me an embarrassment to the family name, I should have walked out. But I stayed. I stayed because I wanted him to see what he'd thrown away. I stayed because the man sitting beside me, the one my father had spent the entire evening mocking, was about to burn my father's world to the ground. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You need to understand how we got here. Let me take you back to when I was 12 years old, before everything fell apart. My mother used to make pancakes every Saturday morning. Not the kind from a box, she'd make them from scratch, mixing flour and eggs and milk while humming to herself. I'd sit at our kitchen table in our Westchester home, swinging my legs that didn't quite reach the floor yet, and she'd serve me a stack with a smile that made me feel like I was the most important person in the world. Extra chocolate chips for my extra sweet girl, she'd say, sliding the plate in front of me. Those Saturday mornings were sacred. Just me and Mom, before Dad woke up, before the world demanded anything from us. She'd tell me stories about her childhood, about the dreams she'd had before she became a wife and mother. She wanted to be an artist once. I remember her showing me sketches she'd hidden in the back of her closet, beautiful drawings of landscapes and people and moments captured in charcoal. Why don't you draw anymore? I asked her once. She smiled, but it was sad around the edges. Life has a way of changing your plans, sweetheart. But that's okay. I got you instead, and you're the best thing I ever created. 6 months later, she was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. 3 months after that, she was gone. I was 12 years old, and the person who made me feel seen disappeared from my life in the time it takes for leaves to change and fall. My father, Lawrence Riley, handled grief the way he handled everything else. With distance and efficiency. The funeral was tasteful and brief. The house was cleaned of her things within a week. And within 18 months, he'd remarried. Judith Ashford entered our lives like a Category 5 hurricane disguised as a gentle breeze. She was beautiful, sophisticated, and came with 2 teenage children from her previous marriage, Preston, who was 14, and Sloane, who was 13. More importantly, she came with family money that made the Rileys look like we were playing at being wealthy. Her grandfather had built half of Connecticut's commercial real estate. Her trust fund had 7 figures before the decimal point. Our comfortable life in Westchester became a sprawling Greenwich estate within months. My father's regional insurance company became a national corporation, thanks to Judith's connections and capital. The business cards changed from simple black and white to embossed gold lettering, and I became invisible. It wasn't immediate. It happened in increments so small I didn't notice until it was too late. First, it was Preston getting the bigger bedroom because boys need more space. Then it was Sloane's private school being prioritized over my public school education because she's at a critical age for college prep. Then it was family dinners where my father asked about Preston's soccer games and Sloane's debate tournaments, but never about my art classes or the story I'd written that won a school competition. The moment I knew for certain I'd lost my place in my own family was the Christmas I turned 14. We were decorating the estate's main staircase, one of those sweeping, grand staircases that Judith loved to showcase. A photographer had been hired to take family portraits for their holiday cards. I was wearing the green velvet dress my father had bought me, excited because he'd actually remembered I loved green. The photographer positioned us for the shot. Judith and my father in the center. Preston and Sloane flanking them. And me, Brennan, honey, Judith said with that smile that never reached her eyes, why don't you step back a bit? You're creating an odd number in the frame. I stepped back. And back. And back. Until I was out of the shot entirely. The photographer looked confused. Shouldn't we include all the children? My father glanced at me like he'd forgotten I was there. Oh. Right. Brennan, you can be in the next round of photos. There was no next round of photos. Those Christmas cards went out to 300 people that year. My father's business associates, Judith's country club friends, extended family I'd never met. Every single card featured my father, Judith, Preston, and Sloane. The perfect family of four. I kept one of those cards. Tucked it in the back of my diary like evidence of my own erasure. Sometimes I'd take it out and stare at it, wondering if I'd imagined my entire childhood before Judith. Wondering if I'd ever really mattered at all. By the time I was 16, I'd stopped trying to compete. Preston was the golden son, sharp, ambitious, ruthless in the way my father admired. He played varsity soccer, got straight A's, and had already decided he was going to Wharton for business school because that's where my father wished he'd gone. Sloane was the golden daughter, beautiful, socially adept, the kind of girl who knew which fork to use at formal dinners and which charities actually mattered to Connecticut society. And me? I was the ghost who lived in their house. I focused on school because it was the only place I had control. I got into Cornell on my own merit, with my own essays and my own recommendations. I didn't ask my father to make calls or use his connections. I wanted to prove I could do it myself. Cornell, my father said when I showed him my acceptance letter. That's good, Brennan. Preston's applying to Wharton, of course. And Sloane's looking at Vassar. He handed the letter back to me without another word. I went to Cornell and studied marketing. Not because I loved it initially, but because I was good at understanding what people wanted to hear. I'd spent years reading rooms, trying to figure out how to make myself matter to a family that had decided I didn't. Those skills translated well into brand strategy and consumer psychology. I graduated with honors. Got hired by a startup in Manhattan that was doing innovative work in digital marketing. I was good at my job. Better than good. Within 2 years, I was promoted to VP of Brand Strategy. Within 3, the company was acquired by a Fortune 100 corporation for $40 million. My equity payout was $3 million. I bought a 2-bedroom condo in Manhattan with views of Central Park. I bought a Tesla. I invested the rest and kept working because I actually loved what I did, and I never told my family any of it, because by then, I'd learned that my success wasn't something they wanted to celebrate. It was something they'd find a way to diminish. The family gatherings became exercises in endurance. Thanksgiving dinner where my father would ask Preston about his McKinsey promotion but wouldn't ask me about my work. Christmas Eve at the Greenwich estate where I'd help Judith's caterers set up because you're so good with that sort of thing, Brennan. Easter brunch where Sloane would show off her engagement ring and I'd smile and congratulate her while my father beamed with pride about his daughter landing a hedge fund manager. What about you, Brennan? Judith's sister asked me once. Any prospects on the relationship front? Before I could answer, my father laughed. Brennan's married to her work. Always has been. Too independent for her own good, the subtext was clear, too difficult. Too focused on herself. Too unwilling to mold herself into what they wanted, I left that Easter brunch early, drove back to Manhattan, and cried in my car for 20 minutes before going up to my apartment. That was 3 years ago. 3 years of being the family afterthought. 3 years of success they knew nothing about. 3 years of building a life that didn't require their approval or validation, and then I met Jasper Hale, and everything changed. It was a Tuesday morning in October. I was in my favorite coffee shop in the West Village, reviewing campaign materials for a major client presentation. The place was crowded, every table occupied, the air thick with the smell of espresso and ambition. I reached for the sugar caddy at the same moment someone else did. Our hands touched. I looked up. He had gray eyes. Not blue-gray or green-gray, but true gray, the color of smoke and storm clouds and steel. His hair was dark and slightly messy, like he'd run his fingers through it too many times. He wore jeans and a Henley that had seen better days, and his hands, the hands that had just touched mine, were calloused and strong. "You take it," he said, his voice low and warm. "I like my coffee bitter anyway." I smiled despite myself. "That sounds like a metaphor for something." "Maybe." He pulled his hand back but didn't move away. "Or maybe I just never learned to enjoy sweet things. That's tragic." "Is it?" He tilted his head, studying me with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable but somehow wasn't. "What if bitter is just honest? Sweet things lie to you. They make you think life is easier than it is." I laughed. Actually laughed. "That's quite a philosophy for 8 in the morning." "I'm Jasper," he said, extending his hand properly this time. "Brennan." His grip was firm, his palm warm. He held my hand for just a moment longer than necessary. "Can I buy you a coffee, Brennan? To make up for the sugar dispute?" I should have said no. I had a presentation in 3 hours. I had materials to review. I had a schedule to keep. "I'd like that," I heard myself say. We sat at a small table by the window. Talked for 2 hours straight. He told me he worked in construction, managed commercial projects around the city. I told him I worked in marketing. We didn't talk about families or money or pedigrees. We talked about architecture. He had strong opinions about which buildings in Manhattan were worth saving. About terrible movies we loved unironically. About the best pizza in the 5 boroughs, which turned into a surprisingly passionate debate. "You can't seriously think Lombardi's is better than Di Fara," argued. "Lombardi's has history, ambience, tradition. Di Fara has Domenico DeMarco making every pizza himself. That man is an artist." Jasper grinned. "An artist who makes you wait an hour for a slice. Art takes time. Hunger doesn't care about art." I was smiling so hard my face hurt. When was the last time I'd smiled like this? When was the last time someone looked at me like I was the only person worth looking at? When I finally checked my phone, I'd missed my presentation by 45 minutes. I should have panicked. Should have rushed out, apologizing profusely. But Jasper was looking at me with those gray eyes, and all I could think was that missing this moment would have been worse than missing any meeting. "You're late for something," he observed. "Very late. Do you need to go?" I looked at him. Really looked at him. At the way he sat completely still, like he had all the time in the world. At the notebook beside him filled with what looked like architectural sketches. At the way his mouth curved up slightly at one corner, like he was always on the verge of a smile. "No," I said. "I don't think I do." "Good." He reached across the table and took my hand. "Because I'm not done talking to you yet." That was how it started. A Tuesday morning in a crowded coffee shop. A dispute over sugar. A conversation that made me forget about presentations and schedules and being the person my family needed me to be. When he finally walked me home that evening, yes, we spent the entire day together. He stopped at my building entrance. "Can I see you again?" he asked, and my heart was doing something strange in my chest. Something I didn't recognize because I'd spent so many years keeping it locked down and protected. "I'd like that," I said. He smiled, and something in me cracked wide open. Not broken. Just open. Like a door I'd been keeping sealed had finally found someone worth opening for. "Tomorrow?" he suggested. "Tomorrow." He didn't kiss me that night. Just squeezed my hand once and walked away. But I stood in my building lobby for 5 full minutes after he left, my hand tingling where his had been, wondering what the hell had just happened to my carefully ordered life. 3 months later, Jasper proposed, not in some elaborate, public way. Not with a crowd or photographers or a ring hidden in dessert. He proposed at 2 a.m. in my bed, after we'd spent the evening arguing about whether Die Hard was a Christmas movie and then proving to each other that talking wasn't the only thing we were good at. I was lying against his chest, his hand tracing lazy patterns on my bare shoulder, feeling more content than I could remember feeling in years. Maybe ever marry me, he whispered into my hair. I thought I'd misheard him. What? He shifted so we were face to face. His gray eyes were serious in the dim light filtering through my curtains. Marry me, Brennan. I want every version of you, forever. My heart stopped. Actually stopped. Jasper, I know it's fast. I know we've only been together 3 months. But I've never been more certain of anything in my life. His hand cupped my face. You don't have to answer now. Think about it. Take all the time you need. But I needed you to know that I'm all in. Completely. Irrevocably. Whatever word means I'm not going anywhere. I kissed him. Couldn't help it. Kissed him like I was drowning and he was air. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, I whispered, yes, yes? Yes, I'll marry you. Yes to every version of you too. Yes to all of it. He kissed me again, deeper this time, his hands tangling in my hair. We didn't sleep for the rest of that night. A week later, he presented me with a ring. Not a diamond, a sapphire the color of midnight, surrounded by small diamonds that caught the light like stars. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. It reminded me of you, he said as he slid it onto my finger. Dark and deep and full of secrets. I should have asked what secrets he thought I had. Should have wondered what secrets he was keeping. But I was too busy being happy. Too busy believing that maybe, finally, I'd found someone who saw me. Really saw me. I should have questioned it. I waited 2 months before telling my family about Jasper. 2 months of bliss where he existed in a world separate from them. Where we could be just Brennan and Jasper, not the disappointing daughter and her fiancé who'd need to be judged and measured and found wanting. But eventually, my father's 60th birthday was approaching. Judith called with that voice she used when she was pretending to be warm. Brennan, darling, we're having a small family dinner next Wednesday. Your father would love for you to be there. Small family dinner meant the 6 of us, my father, Judith, Preston, Sloane, and me. Plus their respective partners if they had them. Which meant Preston's girlfriend Margot would be there. Sloane's husband Trevor would be there. Can I bring someone? I asked. The pause lasted 3 seconds too long. Of course. Who? My fiancé. Another pause. Fiancé? Brennan, you didn't mention you were engaged. It's recent. Well. Her voice had gone tight. How wonderful. We'd love to meet him. What does he do? Here we go. He works in construction. Not a question. A statement of disappointment already forming. How interesting. Well, Wednesday at 7. Don't be late. She hung up before I could respond. I stared at my phone for a full minute before Jasper's voice broke through my thoughts. That bad? He was in my kitchen, making dinner. He did that often, showed up with groceries and cooked while I worked. Tonight it was pasta from scratch, the kind that took hours. He moved through my space like he belonged there, barefoot and comfortable, a dusting of flour on his dark Henley. She asked what you do, and you told her, construction. He didn't turn around from the stove. You could have told her the full truth. What, that you own a construction and development company? That would just lead to more questions I'm not ready to answer. Now he did turn. Crossed to where I sat on the kitchen counter, stepping between my knees. His hands settled on my thighs, warm through my leggings. You're nervous, he observed. They're going to judge you. They're going to judge me for choosing you. They're going to make comments and implications. And he kissed me. Soft and slow and thorough, like he had all the time in the world to remind me that their opinions didn't matter. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. Let them judge. I don't need their approval, Brennan. I only need you. What if they're awful? Then I'll be polite, we'll leave, and I'll take you somewhere that serves food that actually tastes like something. His thumb rubbed circles on my thigh. Hey. Look at me. I did. You are the only Riley that matters to me. Understand? I kissed him again, desperate and grateful. His response was immediate, hands sliding up to my waist, pulling me closer, the solid weight of him anchoring me. For those few minutes, nothing else existed except his mouth on mine and his hands holding me like I was precious. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. We should probably finish cooking before I talk you out of wearing clothes for the rest of the night, I laughed despite my anxiety. Rain check? Absolutely. Wednesday arrived too quickly. I changed outfits 4 times. Jasper watched from my bed, patient and amused, still in his work clothes from the construction site. Jeans worn soft from use. A Henley that showed off arms built from actual labor, not a gym membership. The green dress, he finally said. The green makes me look washed out. The green brings out your eyes. Wear it. I put on the green dress. Stared at myself in the mirror. Saw my mother's eyes looking back at me, the same hazel that changed color depending on the light. I hadn't thought about that in years. How much I looked like her. How much that must have bothered my father every time he looked at me. You're beautiful, Jasper said quietly behind me. I turned into him, pressing my face against his chest. He smelled like sawdust and cedar and something uniquely him. I don't want to go. Then we won't. I have to. No, you don't. His hand came up to cup the back of my head. You don't owe them your presence, Brennan. You don't owe them anything. I pulled back to look at him. When did you get so wise? When I fell in love with a woman who forgets her own worth sometimes. He kissed my forehead. Come on. Let's go show your family what they've been missing. The Greenwich estate looked exactly the same as it always did. Imposing. Perfect. Cold. Judith answered the door in a cashmere twin set that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her eyes swept over Jasper taking in his khakis and button-down shirt, the sport coat he'd worn to look presentable. I saw the calculation in her expression. Saw her categorizing him as not one of us. You must be Jasper, she said, extending a hand like she was bestowing a favor. How lovely to meet you. Thank you for having me, Mrs. Riley. His handshake was firm but not aggressive. Perfect. Oh, call me Judith. We're practically family. She turned to me. Brennan, you look lovely. That dress is very you, which meant, not expensive enough. Not stylish enough. Not Sloan. The dining room was exactly as I remembered. Mahogany table that could seat 12. China that cost a fortune. Crystal that caught the light from the chandelier overhead. My father sat at the head of the table, Preston to his right, already deep in conversation about market trends. Sloan was across from him, radiant as always, Trevor beside her looking bored. Brennan. My father stood, came around to hug me. A brief, awkward embrace that felt more like an obligation than affection. Glad you could make it. Happy early birthday, Dad. I handed him the gift. I'd brought a first edition of a book he'd mentioned loving once, years ago. I'd spent 2 weeks tracking it down, but he barely glanced at it. Thank you, sweetheart. Very thoughtful. He set it aside on the sideboard. And this must be Jasper. They shook hands. I watched my father's eyes go to Jasper's hands, the calluses, the slight tan line from work gloves, the strength in his grip. Saw him file Jasper under manual labor. Beneath us, Jasper hail, Jasper said evenly. Thank you for including me tonight. Of course, of course. My father gestured to the table. Please, sit. Judith's prepared quite the meal. Judith hadn't prepared anything. Her cook had. But we all played along with the fiction. Dinner was exactly as terrible as I'd feared. Preston dominated the conversation, talking about his recent promotion at the consulting firm where he worked. How he'd just closed a deal with a Fortune 500 company. How his boss was already talking about making him partner. That's wonderful, Preston, my father said, beaming with pride. A Riley making partner before 30. I'm so proud of you, son. Not stepson. Son. Lone chimed in about her charity work, planning a gala for underprivileged children, getting mentions in Connecticut Magazine, networking with wives of influential men. My father praised her grace and social consciousness. Trevor talked about his hedge fund's returns. Margot discussed her family's real estate portfolio. I said nothing. Just pushed food around my plate and felt Jasper's hand find mine under the table, squeezing gently. Then Preston turned his attention to us. Jasper, he said with that smile that didn't reach his eyes. Brennan mentioned you work in construction. What kind of construction? Commercial projects. Mostly in Manhattan. How interesting. Preston's tone said the opposite. Must be tough with the economy. Construction's one of those industries that really feels the downturns, isn't it? Every industry has its challenges. Of course. Preston leaned back in his chair, swirling his wine. And you met Brennan where? At a job site. The implication was clear. You're too low class to have met her any other way. A coffee shop, I interjected. We both have terrible taste in caffeine. My father laughed, but it was hollow. Well, Jasper, I hope you're prepared for what marrying into this family means. The Rileys have certain standards to uphold. I'm aware, Jasper said quietly. Judith swept in with dessert. Jasper, Brennan tells us you work in construction. That must be very physical work. Do you enjoy it? I do. How refreshing. So many young people today aren't willing to do honest labor. She said honest labor like it was something quaint and slightly embarrassing. Trevor's family is in finance. Preston's in consulting. But manual work has its place, certainly. I felt Jasper's hand tighten fractionally on mine under the table. Sloane smiled sweetly. Brennan's always been attracted to unconventional choices. Remember when she wanted to be an artist in college? Thank goodness she settled into marketing instead. I minored in art, I said quietly. And I love marketing. Of course you do, sweetheart. My father's voice was patronizing. You've always been creative. Not everyone can be analytically minded like Preston, the subtext screamed, not as smart. Not as valuable. Preston raised his glass. Well, here's to Brennan and Jasper. May you find happiness in your unique pairing. Unique pairing. Code for, you're settling. She could have done better. We left shortly after dessert. My father pulled me aside on the way out. Are you sure about this, Brennan? His voice was low. He seems like a nice enough fellow, but marriage is complicated. You want someone who can match you. Intellectually. Financially. Professionally. He does match me. I mean someone from our world. A construction worker, Brennan? Really? What do you two even talk about? Everything. We talk about everything. We talk until 3 a.m. and wake up tangled together still talking. But you wouldn't understand that because you've never asked me about my life. I should go, I said instead. He sighed. I just want what's best for you. No. You want what looks best to your friends. I end the car. Jasper was silent. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I reached for his hand. I'm sorry. They were exactly what you warned me they'd be. He squeezed my fingers. It's fine. But it wasn't fine. I could see it in the set of his jaw, the tension radiating from his shoulders. We drove back to my apartment in silence. Once inside, I tried to apologize again. Jasper, I'm so sorry. The way they treated you. He stopped me with a kiss. Deep and demanding, his hands framing my face. Don't apologize for them, he said when we broke apart. They had no right, Brennan. His thumbs stroked my cheekbones. Let me be very clear about something. I don't need your father's approval. I don't need his respect. The only thing I need from the Riley family is you. He kissed me again, slower this time. When he pulled back, his gray eyes were dark with something that made my pulse race. Now, can we stop talking about your family? Because I've been thinking about you all day, and I have much better plans for tonight. Those plans involved him taking his time, worshipping every inch of my skin, making me forget my own name. Jasper had always been deliberate, methodical, focused, determined to learn exactly what made me come apart. That night was no different, except for the edge of something new in his touched possession, maybe. Or promise. Afterward, wrapped in sheets and satisfaction, he traced patterns on my bare shoulder. I meant what I said, he murmured. You're the only Riley I care about, I know. Do you? He turned me to face him. Because I need you to know something, Brennan. Whatever happens, I'm on your side. Always. It was an odd thing to say. But I was too drowsy and content to question it. I should have questioned it. The months leading up to my father's birthday dinner were a masterclass in subtle cruelty. Preston's engagement party to Margot happened in March. I got the invitation 3 days before the event, a cream-colored card with gold embossing that screamed money and exclusivity. It's this Saturday? I asked Judith when she called to confirm I'd received it. Yes, darling. I know it's short notice, but the printer had delays. The printer hadn't had delays. I'd been an afterthought. A box to check so they could say they'd invited me. I have a work commitment, I lied. Oh. Relief flooded her voice. Well, that's understandable. Work is so important. We'll miss you. She wouldn't miss me. None of them would. Jasper and I went to dinner instead, a tiny Italian place in the village where the owner knew him by name and the wine was cheap and perfect. We sat at a corner table with a red checkered tablecloth, and for 2 hours, I forgot I had a family that didn't want me. Do you ever regret it? I asked him as we shared tiramisu. Getting involved with a family like mine, Jasper set down his wine glass, his gray eyes serious. I regret that they don't see what I see. But regret you? Never. What do you see? He smiled, slow and devastating. A woman who built herself despite them. Who's brilliant and beautiful and has no idea how much power she actually has. I'm a marketer, Jasper. I sell products and narratives. That's not power. Isn't it? He leaned forward. You understand how people think, what they want, how to change minds. That's more power than most people ever have. Your family just never bothered to look closely enough to see it. I'd never thought about it that way. 2 weeks later, Judith called again. Brennan, dear, we need to discuss your father's birthday party. It's going to be quite the event. 200 guests at the club. Very formal. 200 guests. A statement party. A display of the Riley family's importance. Okay, and I'm afraid we need to talk about Jasper. My stomach dropped. What about him? Well, darling, this is a very specific crowd. Business associates, old family friends. I'm just not sure Jasper would be comfortable. Perhaps it would be better if you came alone. The rage was instant and white-hot. No, Brennan, be reasonable. I said no. If Jasper isn't invited, neither am I. Silence. Then, let me discuss this with your father. The call came from Lawrence himself an hour later. Brennan, let's not be dramatic. Judith is just trying to make things comfortable for everyone, comfortable or acceptable. There's a difference, Dad. Fine. Bring him. His voice had gone sharp. But please, have him wear something appropriate. This isn't a casual affair. These are important people, and I won't have our family embarrassed. Our family. As if I was the one who didn't belong. I hung up without responding. When I told Jasper about the conversation, he was in my kitchen making dinner. He didn't turn around from the stove where he was sautéing mushrooms. You don't have to bring me, he said quietly. I want to bring you, Brennan. I crossed to him, pressing myself against his back, wrapping my arms around his waist. I want you there. I need you there. Pleased, he turned in my arms, searching my face. Whatever he saw there made him nod. Okay. But I'm buying a new suit. You don't have to do that. Your suits are fine. I'm buying a new suit, he repeated firmly. If I'm going to be paraded in front of your father's world, I'm doing it on my terms. The suit arrived 3 days before the party. Jasper wouldn't let me see it. Said he wanted it to be a surprise. The night of my father's birthday dinner, I spent an hour getting ready. Tried on 3 dresses before settling on deep emerald green, simple, elegant, expensive in a way that whispered rather than shouted. I'd bought it specifically for this night. Wanted to look like I belonged in their world, even though I'd long since stopped wanting to actually belong. I was touching up my lipstick when Jasper emerged from my bathroom. I stopped breathing. The suit was black, perfectly tailored, expensive in a way that somehow made every other suit I'd ever seen look cheap. His shirt was crisp white, the tie charcoal gray. His dark hair, usually slightly messy, was styled back. He looked like money. Like power. Like he could buy and sell everyone in that room. Well, he asked, a slight smile playing at his mouth, you look. I couldn't finish the sentence till he crossed to me, his hand sliding around my waist, pulling me close. You look devastating, he murmured against my ear, his breath warm on my skin. I'm going to have a very hard time keeping my hands to myself tonight, promise? I breathed, his laugh was dark. We should go before I prove how little I care about being on time. The country club was exactly as excessive as I'd expected, chandeliers dripping crystal. Champagne flowing. A string quartet playing in the corner. Flowers that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent arranged on every available surface. 200 of my father's closest friends, which meant 200 people who'd watched me grow up and still treated me like I was 12 and incapable of adult achievements. Lawrence Riley held court at the center of the ballroom, Judith at his side like a trophy wife, which was essentially what she was. Preston and Margot were making rounds, all polished smiles and practiced charm. Sloane floated through the crowd in designer everything, Trevor trailing behind her like an accessory. We made it exactly 10 minutes before my father approached. If you've ever had to defend someone you love to people who should have been on your side, drop a bin there in the comments. And make sure you're subscribed, because what happens next is going to make you want to stand up and cheer. My father's eyes swept over Jasper's suit, and something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe. Or confusion that the construction worker could afford something that looked like it cost more than a month's rent. Glad you could make it, my father said, extending his hand to Jasper. Happy birthday, Dad. I handed him the gift I'd brought, an obscure first edition I'd tracked down for weeks, knowing he'd never appreciate the effort I'd put into finding it. He barely glanced at it. Thank you. Set it aside on a nearby table like it was junk mail. Then back to Jasper. Quite the suit. Special occasion shopping? There was something in his tone. Something mocking. Something that said, did you rent that? Jasper's hand tightened fractionally at my waist. You could say that. Preston materialized at my father's elbow, Margot attached to his arm like an expensive accessory. His eyes went straight to me, assessing. Hey, little sister. Nice dress. Is that from last season? It was from 3 weeks ago. From a boutique that required appointments. But I didn't take the bait, Preston. Margot. Congratulations again on the engagement. Thanks. Preston's eyes slid to Jasper, and I saw the calculation there. The assessment. The judgment. Jasper, right? The construction guy. How's business? Must be tough with the economy the way it is. Business is fine, Jasper said evenly. That's good, that's good. Preston swirled his champagne, that smug smile never leaving his face. You know, Margot's father is in real estate development. Big projects all over the Northeast. Maybe we could connect you with some work if you ever need it. Always good to have reliable contractors on call. The condescension was so thick I could barely breathe. Reliable contractors. Like Jasper was someone you called to fix your toilet, but Jasper just smiled. That's generous of you, Judith swept in, all false warmth and expensive perfume. Brennan, dear, you look lovely. That color suits you. It's adequate. Not as stunning as Sloane, but adequate. She turned to Jasper. Jasper, what a nice suit. You clean up well, you clean up well. As if his natural state was dirty and uncivilized, I felt Jasper's hand move to my hip, grounding me. Thank you, Mrs. Riley. Oh, call me Judith. We're practically family now, aren't we? She turned to my father. Lawrence, shouldn't we start the toast soon? People are getting restless. My father clapped his hands, calling for attention. The string quartet stopped playing. Conversations died mid-sentence. 200 guests turned their focus to the center of the ballroom where my father stood, microphone in hand. This was it. The performance. The showcase of everything the Rileys had built. Thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate with me, he began, his voice booming through the space. 60 years. It's hard to believe. But standing here, surrounded by friends and family, I'm reminded of how blessed I've been. He launched into the expected speech. Thanking people for their support. Talking about building the company. Mentioning the importance of legacy and family values. I want to thank my beautiful wife Judith, he continued, gesturing to her. For bringing such joy and sophistication into my life. For being my partner in all things. The crowd applauded. Judith smiled graciously, and I'm so proud of my son Preston, he continued. My stomach clenched. My son. Not stepson. Who's following in my footsteps in the business world. Just made partner at one of the most prestigious consulting firms in the country. That's the kind of excellence that makes a father proud. More applause. Preston raised his glass, basking in the attention, and my daughter Sloane, who's shown that success isn't just about business. Her charity work, her grace, her ability to bring people together, these are the qualities that define true class. Sloane pressed her hand to her chest, the perfect picture of humble gratitude. I'm also grateful for all my children, my father said, and my heart sank. Here it comes. Brennan's here tonight with her friend Jasper, friend. Not fiancé. Friend, Brennan works in marketing. She's always been creative, my little dreamer. His tone was indulgent. Patronizing. Like he was talking about a child's hobby. Not everyone can be a titan of industry, but she's making her way. Doing her best. And that's admirable in its own right, the room chuckled politely. Making her way. Doing her best. The subtext was deafening. She's trying, bless her heart, but she'll never be Preston. I wanted to dissolve into the marble floor. Wanted to disappear completely. Preston took the microphone next, launching into a toast about following in our father's footsteps, about learning from the best, about the importance of ambition and excellence. Every word was a knife aimed at me. Sloane went next, sweet and poised, talking about family and gratitude and how lucky she was to have been welcomed into the Riley family. Welcomed. Like I hadn't been born into it. My father gestured to me. Brennan, would you like to say a few words? Every eye in the room turned to me. 200 people. 200 witnesses to my humiliation. Jasper's hand was still at my hip, steady and sure. I could feel the warmth of him through my dress. I took the microphone with shaking hands. Kept it brief. Happy birthday, Dad. You've built an incredible life, an incredible family. I hope tonight lives up to everything you deserved. I handed back the microphone, thinking it was over, but my father wasn't done. You know, Brennan's always been independent, he said, still holding the microphone. Never asked for help, never wanted to use the family name. I admire that, even if it's made things harder for her. She's always insisted on doing everything herself. He turned to Jasper. Jasper, you're a working man. You understand the value of honest labor. I respect that. There's dignity in working with your hands. The subtext was deafening. You're beneath us, but at least you work for a living. I felt Jasper's entire body tense beside me. When I glanced up at him, his face was unreadable, but something in his gray eyes had changed. Gone cold. Gone sharp. Gone dangerous. Actually, Lawrence, Jasper said, his voice cutting through the polite murmurs like a blade. I think there's been a misunderstanding. My father looked surprised that Jasper was speaking. That the construction worker had the audacity to interrupt. Oh, Jasper stepped forward, and suddenly every eye in the room was on him. He commanded space in a way I'd never seen before. Like he belonged at the center of attention. Like he was born for it. I don't think we've been properly introduced. Not really. My father's smile was becoming fixed. I'm sorry, my name is Jasper Hale, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of that ballroom. But perhaps you know me better as JH Construction and Development. We recently acquired a majority stake in Ashford Properties. The silence that followed was absolute. I watched Judith's face drain of all color. Watched her hand go to her throat like she couldn't breathe. What? Her voice was barely a whisper. Ashford Properties, Jasper repeated calmly. Your family's real estate company. The one that's been struggling since the commercial market downturn. I bought 51% of it 6 weeks ago. My father was staring at Jasper like he'd spoken in a foreign language. That was purchased by a development company. Some firm incorporated overseas. The parent company is incorporated in Hong Kong for tax purposes, Jasper explained, still calm, still collected. But I'm the principal owner. JH Construction has holdings in 23 states and 3 countries. We're valued at approximately $2 billion. The number hit the room like a physical force. Preston made a choking sound. Someone's champagne glass shattered on the marble floor. A woman at table 12 gasped so loudly it echoed. $2 billion. Jasper's hand found mine, threading our fingers together. I apologize for the deception. Brennan didn't know my full net worth when we met. I preferred to keep it quiet. Wanted to see who I was dealing with before revealing the full scope of my operations. Every person in that room was staring at us now. At me. At my hand in Jasper's. At the construction worker who wasn't a construction worker at all. My father had recovered enough to speak, though his voice was weak. Why wouldn't you say something? Because, Jasper said, his voice taking on an edge I'd never heard before, I wanted to see how you'd treat your daughter when you thought she'd chosen someone you considered beneath her. The silence was suffocating, and you failed, Jasper continued. Spectacularly. You spent 3 years dismissing her, diminishing her, treating her like an embarrassment. You mocked her career, a career that's actually more successful than you realize. You made her feel like she had to apologize for me, for choosing me. His hand tightened on mine. But here's what you don't know, Dud. He looked at me then, and something fierce and protective blazed in those gray eyes. Renan is the VP of brand strategy at Meridian Marketing, Jasper announced to the room. That startup you dismissed? It was acquired by a Fortune 100 company for $40 million last year. I could hear the gasps. Could feel 200 pairs of eyes boring into me. Your daughter netted $3 million from her equity stake. She's been financially independent from you since she was 25. She owns a 2-bedroom condo in Manhattan with views of Central Park. She drives a Tesla. She has a 6-month waiting list for her consulting services. My father's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. She's never needed your money or your name, Jasper continued. And she certainly doesn't need your approval. She built everything herself. While you were celebrating Preston's mediocre achievements and Sloane's social climbing, Brennan was becoming one of the most sought-after brand strategists on the East Coast. Preston's face had gone purple. Margot was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. As for the Riley Company, Jasper said, turning back to my father, I should mention that Ashford Properties holds the lease on your corporate headquarters. The one that's up for renewal next month. Judith looked like she might faint. The renewal, yes. I'm sure you've been wondering why the negotiations have been so difficult. Jasper smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'll be happy to discuss renewal terms. But I should warn you, I'm very motivated to ensure that my future father-in-law understands the value of respect. Especially toward his daughter. Preston found his voice. You can't be serious. You'd threaten Dad's company over his treatment of the woman I love? Jasper's voice was steel. Absolutely. See, Preston, when you love someone, you don't let people diminish them. You don't stand by while they're made to feel less than. You protect them. You fight for them. Apparently, that's a concept your family doesn't understand. He turned to me, his expression softening. Brennan, I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I wanted you to know me as just Jasper first. The man, not the money. Can you forgive me? I was still processing. My mind was reeling. You're a billionaire, technically yes. But I'm also still the guy who likes terrible movies and burns toast and thinks you're the most extraordinary woman he's ever met. Why didn't you defend yourself? All those dinners, all the comments, because I didn't need to, he said simply. Their opinions of me never mattered. The only opinion I cared about was yours. I looked at my father. At his frozen expression. At the shock written across his face. At Preston's rage. At Judith's horror. At Sloane's complete disbelief. 200 guests watching this unfold like the best drama they'd seen in years. Something inside me cracked. Not broke. Cracked open. Like a dam that had been holding back years of pressure, I started laughing, not polite laughter. Not nervous laughter. Real, genuine, from the belly laughter that made my eyes water and my stomach hurt. Brennan? Jasper looked concerned. I'm sorry, I managed between gasps. It's just they thought I was the failure. The embarrassment. The one who couldn't measure up. I looked at my father. You spent years making me feel like I wasn't good enough. Like I was the disappointment. The child who couldn't compete with Preston's consulting job or Sloane's charity galas. More laughter bubbled up. And the whole time, I was more successful than all of them. I made more money than Preston. I own property worth more than Sloane's entire wardrobe. I built something real while they were playing an importance. I wiped my eyes. But you never asked. You never cared enough to find out who I actually was. You just assumed I was failing because that fit your narrative better. When I finally composed myself, I looked at my father. Really looked at him. Saw him clearly for the first time in years. I forgive you, Dad, I said quietly. The laughter had drained out of me, leaving something calmer behind. Something stronger. For everything. The dismissals, the comparisons, making me feel like I was never enough. I forgive you, his eyes widened with hope, but I'm done trying to earn your respect. I don't need it anymore. I don't want it anymore. I turned to Jasper, this man who'd let himself be insulted and dismissed for 3 years just to prove a point about my worth. Take me home, gladly. We started toward the exit, Jasper's arm around my waist. Behind us, the room erupted. Whispers, gasps, the clatter of silverware on plates as people leaned toward each other to gossip about what they'd just witnessed. My father's voice stopped us at the door. Brennan. Wait, I turned. He looked smaller somehow. Older. Like he'd aged a decade in the past 10 minutes. I didn't know. About your success. About Jasper. You should have told me. Would it have mattered? I asked. Would you have seen me differently if you'd known I was successful? Or would you have just found new ways to diminish it? New ways to make Preston look better by comparison? He had no answer. That's what I thought. I looked at him for a long moment. This man I'd spent 28 years trying to impress. Trying to make proud. Trying to force to see me. You taught me something important, Dad. You taught me that real family doesn't need you to prove yourself. Real family doesn't require you to earn love or respect or basic human decency. They just need you to be you. I paused at the door. I hope the rest of your party is everything you deserved. We walked out into the cool night air. Behind us, I could hear the chaos we'd left behind. Raised voices. Judith's shrill tones. Preston's angry protests, but ahead of us was freedom. If you're loving this story of someone finally standing up for themselves, smash that like button. Comment below, Team Brennan or Team Riley family? I'm reading every single comment, and I want to know where you stand. Because what comes next isn't just about revenge, it's about what happens when you finally choose yourself. I end the car. Jasper was quiet for several minutes. Just drove, his hand resting on my thigh, warm and solid. Finally, he pulled over into an empty parking lot. Turned to face me. Are you angry? He asked. That you're a billionaire? Or that you let my family treat you like garbage for 3 years? Both. Either. I thought about it. Really thought about it. I should be but mostly I'm just relieved that you saw what I've been living with. That I'm not crazy for feeling like I was never enough. That someone finally fought for me, that he kept my face in his hands. Brennan, I need you to understand something. I didn't reveal my identity to show off or to humiliate your father, though that was a nice bonus. I did it because I needed them to see you the way I see you. As someone extraordinary who succeeded despite them, not because of them. How long have you been planning this? Since the first family dinner. When your father dismissed you, when Preston mocked you, when they treated you like you were less than, I knew I had to do something. So I started looking into your family's business connections. Found out about the Ashford property situation. Realized I had leverage. The rest fell into place. You bought a majority share in my stepmother's company for revenge? Bought it because it was a sound investment that happened to give me leverage. The revenge was just excellent timing. I stared at him. This man I thought I knew. Who are you, really? He smiled, slow and genuine. I'm the guy who fell in love with you in a coffee shop 3 years ago. Who loves that you snort when you laugh really hard? Who knows you take your coffee with too much sugar and not enough cream? Who thinks you're brilliant and beautiful and deserves better than what your family gives you? He leaned closer. Everything else is just details that include $2 billion, well, yes. But I promise I'm still terrible at cooking, and I still leave my socks on the floor, despite everything, the confrontation, the revelations, the chaos we'd left behind. I laughed. Take me home, I said. Our home, our apartment, he corrected. I've been staying there more than my place for a year anyway. Might as well make it official. Our apartment. I loved how natural it felt to say our apartment now. Jasper loosened his tie and shrugged off the expensive suit jacket. Underneath all that money and power, he was still just Jasper. Still the man who knew how I took my coffee, who made me laugh, who'd seen me at my worst and loved me anyway. Are you really not angry? He asked, watching me from across the living room. I walked to him, pressed my hands against his chest. Felt his heartbeat steady and strong under my palms. I'm not angry. I'm grateful. For what? For someone finally fighting for me. For seeing my worth when my own family couldn't. For loving me enough to endure their condescension just to prove a point. His hands settled on my hips, pulling me closer. I'd endure a lot worse for you, I know. I kissed him, soft and slow, pouring everything I couldn't say into it. When we broke apart, I rested my forehead against his. Thank you for everything. That night, with Jasper's arms around me, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. My father's opinion didn't matter anymore. Preston's mockery held no weight. I had a man who loved me, a career I'd built myself, and a future that had nothing to do with living up to Lawrence Riley's expectations. I woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of burning toast. Some things never changed. My phone was on the nightstand, screen dark. I'd turned it off before bed, knowing what would be waiting. Now, in the calm of morning, I turned it back on. 47 missed calls from my father. 18 from Judith. 3 from Preston. Even Sloan had reached out with a carefully worded text. I had no idea about Jasper's background. We should talk. I deleted the voicemails without listening to them. Jasper appeared in the doorway with a coffee mug and a plate of blackened toast. Morning. I see my cooking skills haven't improved overnight. I laughed, accepting the coffee. How are you feeling? Free, I said honestly. For the first time in my life, completely free. He sat beside me, his hand finding mine. Good. Because I have a confession to make. Another one? The ring I gave you. He nodded to my hand, where the sapphire caught the morning light. It was my grandmother's. She left it to me with very specific instructions. She said to give it to someone who'd earned it through character, not through birth or money. Jasper, she would have loved you, he continued. She built her own business from nothing. Raised 2 kids alone after my grandfather died. She understood what it meant to be underestimated, to be dismissed, to have to fight for every inch of respect. When I met you, I knew. You were exactly who she wanted me to find. I set down my coffee and kissed him, pouring everything I couldn't articulate into it. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "Marry me," he said. "Not someday, not eventually. Soon. Let's build something that's just ours, without anyone else's approval or opinion." "Yes," I whispered. God, yes.by noon, the story had spread through Greenwich society faster than wildfire. My phone buzzed with a text from a former colleague. "You're trending on LinkedIn. The story about last night is everywhere." I opened the app to find that someone, probably one of the 200 guests, had posted about the confrontation. The post had been shared thousands of times. Comments ranged from supportive to shocked to gleefully vindictive. "This is what happens when you underestimate people. The Riley family just got served the most expensive lesson of their lives. I always knew Brennan was more than they gave her credit for." By afternoon, the business consequences started rolling in. Point 3 of my father's major clients had reached out to Jasper's company, asking about potential partnerships. They wanted to work with JH Construction, not the Riley company. The implication was clear: they were jumping ship. A notification popped up on my phone. An email from a journalist at Forbes.ms. "Riley, we're doing a feature on successful entrepreneurs who built their careers without family support. Your story has come to our attention. Would you be interested in an interview?" I showed it to Jasper. "Are you going to do it?" he asked. "I think I am." "Good. It's time people knew the truth." The social destruction of my father's reputation happened swiftly and completely. Within a week, Judith had been quietly removed from 2 charity boards. The official reason was scheduling conflicts, but everyone knew the truth. The country club was buzzing with gossip about the Riley family's public humiliation. Preston's engagement to Margot fell apart 3 weeks later. Her family, concerned about being associated with the scandal, had pressured her to reconsider. She'd chosen her family's reputation over Preston's ring. Sloane distanced herself, changing her social media to her married name and making it clear she was Trevor's wife first, Riley second. My father called once. Just once. "Brennan, we need to talk." "I don't think we do, please. Just give me 5 minutes." I agreed to meet him. Not at the estate, not at his office. A neutral coffee shop in Manhattan. He looked older than I'd ever seen him. Gray at the temples had become gray throughout. Lines around his eyes had deepened into crevasses. "I didn't know," he said without preamble. "About your success. About who you'd become. You should have told me. Would it have mattered? Would you have treated me differently if you'd known I was successful?" He was quiet for a long time. "I don't know. Maybe. I'd like to think so. That's the problem, Dad. Your love, your respect, your approval was always conditional. I had to earn it. Preston and Sloane got it for free. They were." He stopped himself. "What? Easier? More what you wanted?" "Say it." "I'm sorry," he said instead. "For everything. For making you feel invisible. For not seeing what was right in front of me. I know you are. But sorry doesn't undo 28 years of being treated like I didn't matter." "What can I do?" I thought about it. "Nothing, Dad. There's nothing you can do. Maybe that's okay. Maybe we just need to accept that we're strangers who share DNA, and that's all we'll ever be. That's not what I want. That's not about what you want anymore." I left him sitting there, coffee untouched, looking lost. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not sadness, not anger. Just a quiet acceptance that some relationships aren't worth saving. 6 months later, Jasper and I got married on a beach in Maine. 20 people who actually mattered. No grand ballroom, no 200 witnesses, no performance for people who'd never really cared. Just us and the people who'd chosen to see us, support us, love us. My father wasn't invited. Neither was Judith or Preston or Sloane. They sent gifts anyway, expensive, guilt-laden things that screamed obligation and desperation. I donated every single one to charity. What I did keep were the letters my father wrote every month. Long, rambling attempts at apology and reconciliation. I read them all. Filed them away without responding. Forgiveness, I learned, didn't mean reconciliation. It meant choosing to stop letting their opinions have power over me. It meant building a life so full of love and success and genuine connection that their approval became irrelevant. I launched my own consulting firm. Helped companies build authentic brands without pretense or manipulation. My first major client was Jasper's company. He insisted on paying full price, treating me like any other consultant. Within a year, I had a waiting list that stretched 6 months. The Forbes article published with the headline, "From Invisible to Invaluable, How Brennan Riley Built a Brand Empire Without Family Support." The article went viral. I received emails from hundreds of people who'd felt overlooked by their own families. Who'd built success despite being told they weren't good enough. My father read it. "I know because he called. I always knew you'd be successful," he said. "No," I replied. "You knew I'd be useful. There's a difference." "I'm sorry, Brennan. For everything. I know you are. But sorry doesn't change the past. It just acknowledges it. What can I do to make this right? Nothing. And maybe that's the point. Maybe we both just need to accept that you had a daughter and you didn't see her until it was too late. Some damage can't be undone." I hung up gently. Not with anger, but with finality. Jasper found me on our balcony that evening, looking out at the city lights. "You okay?" He wrapped his arms around me from behind. "Yeah. I really am, good." He kissed my temple. "Because I have news. The Portland acquisition went through. We're expanding into the Pacific Northwest. That's incredible. It gets better. I want you to handle all the branding and marketing. Your firm, your vision, your terms. Are you interested?" I turned in his arms. "You don't have to keep giving me work. I can succeed without you." "I know you can. But why should I hire someone else when I can work with the best?" His smile turned wicked. "Besides, there are some interesting benefits to having my wife as a business partner." "Like what?" "Like this." He kissed me, deep and thorough. "And calling it a business meeting," I laughed against his mouth. "We're going to get sued." "Worth it." Later that night, wrapped in sheets and satisfaction, Jasper traced lazy patterns on my bare shoulder. "Do you ever regret it? Walking away from your family?" "I regret that it was necessary. But no, I don't regret the choice. They couldn't see me for who I was. You did. That's the only approval I'll ever need." He pulled me closer. "You know what I think?" "What?" "Your father did me a favor. By treating you like you were less than, he made sure you never took success for granted. You fought for everything you have. That's rare. That's valuable." "Are you saying I should thank him?" "God, no. I'm saying his loss is my gain. He threw away something extraordinary. I get to keep it. Hat boundaries do you need to set in your own life? Drop them in the comments. Sometimes writing them down is the first step to actually implementing them. And if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear that choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. My father had his empire, his connections, his perfect golden children who were slowly disappointing him in new and creative ways. I had Jasper. I had my success. I had a life built on my terms. Success wasn't revenge. It was freedom. If you've ever been the disappointing child, the overlooked daughter, the one who had to prove your worth while others got it handed to them, I see you. Your success doesn't need their validation. Your worth isn't determined by their blindness. Build something extraordinary. Find people who see you. Create a life so full and authentic that their approval becomes irrelevant. That's not revenge. That's liberation. Emily isn't who you're born to. It's who chooses to see you, value you, fight for you. My father taught me that lesson in the worst possible way. But in doing so, he taught me the most valuable lesson of all: I never needed him to succeed. I only needed to believe in myself. And trust me, when you finally choose yourself over people who've spent years making you feel small, that's the sweetest victory of all. Thank you for staying with me through this entire story. If you're still here, you're my people. The ones who understand that standing up for yourself isn't cruel, it's necessary. Drop a comment telling me what part of this story hit you hardest. I read every single one. And please, subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell. Because I have more stories like this, stories about people who refused to stay small, who chose themselves, who built extraordinary lives out of the ashes of rejection. Until next time, remember, your worth isn't negotiable. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. This is Alice, reminding you that the best revenge is a life well lived on your own terms.